Hello, welcome to today's class. My name is Jon Witt, and this is to get you into a handstand. So if you have no experience with a handstand before, I'll give you tips along the way to help build a foundation as far as getting on your hands. I think the biggest thing, and I've said this probably before, is really just having the desire to do it. So if you have an interest in it, I really believe anyone can get a handstand. Some people have a hard time with getting their arms completely straight. That's not a problem. Some people need a very wide stance with their hands. Some people get their hands too close together, and all these things factor into why it could be more difficult, and that's why people get deterred and stop doing a handstand. So it's just a matter of looking at things and basically being a little bit more specific in getting you to do it how you should do it. So like my arms are different lengths of your arms. My skeletal system weighs different than yours. So all these things, again, have factors why some people get a handstand in a matter of a month and some people get it, might take actually years to achieve it. So I hope you've enjoyed these classes. I enjoyed teaching them. You could always send me a video and then I could give you specific corrections. It's very easy to do. You just send it direct message and I could take a look at it and give you some feedback as far as how to help you in getting into a handstand. So how I'm going to start is I'm going to be on my hands and my knees. So you don't have to sit like me, but I'm going to sit on my toes. So I'm sitting back on the heels of the feet. And then I'm just basically going to take the arms into a cactus position, which will help rotate the shoulders out. So I'm going to make my hands into fists, like really strong through the hands. So if you do anything of hanging or pulling, right, hands get much stronger. That's a very easy way to build up strength in the forearms and the hands, which will help. And then I'm going to take my arms up overhead. As I take my arms up overhead, try not to get your hands together, but get your shoulders to elevate and get your shoulders to touch your head if you can. And then just let them relax and then do it again. Just going to do this about 10 times. So squeezing into the head with the shoulders, letting it relax, elevating the scapula, getting the shoulders to the ears, and then letting it relax, and then up and squeezing in. So the elevation of the scapula is really a big part of getting to hold it. So you want to have scapula stability, let it relax. You can lift up. So if you're really having a hard time balancing or holding it up against the wall, like I said, getting the shoulders to be stronger. Let it relax. Keep lifting, keep pressing. It could be a static hold, but the reason I'm doing it like this is when it relax for a moment, it'll teach you in integrating, quicker or faster or getting it, to hold a bit better. Let it relax. We're going to do 3 more. So lift the shoulders up towards the ears. Let them relax. 1 more time. Squeeze in, or 2 more times we'll do it. Let it relax. And then last time, lifting shoulders up towards the ears. And then go back into the cactus position. So you can make the hands into fists. You can open the hands. You can make them back into fists. And then you can let that relax. I'm going to come down. So I'm just changing the position of my feet now. So I'm going to sit back on my feet. And then as I sit back on the feet, I'm just going to move back a little bit more just to create some extension through the front of my body. If you have a lot of tightness, you're that type of person, it's not a bad thing, but it may make it more difficult to do a handstand. If you have good flexibility, it's usually a matter of conditioning. So if you're like, I just can't get a handstand, you're an avid yoga practitioner, you've been for one for a while, it may just be that you're not strong enough. You're strong in other ways, right? But you're not strong enough on your hands to hold it. And that'll come. It's just you have to spend a little bit more time on your strength. So I'm going to come forward, I'm going to tuck the toes, and I'm going to come up into a down dog. So you can press back and up into a down dog. So that as you're back up into a down dog, try to pull back through the thighs, reach down through the heels, and think I'm pulling your arms forward in space. So I'm getting the arms to come forward, pull the thighs back in space, And then what you're going to do is come forward into plank. With handstands, you can point the index finger straight forward, almost slightly out a little bit. And if you have stuff going on in your wrist or your hands, feel free to turn your hands all the way out. It's not a problem. It just makes it a little bit more difficult to balance. But if it's taking away from your practice, I think it's better to do ways that will help the connective tissues heal again. And then you can go back to having the hands forward if that, some people just can't do that. You could have the hands all the way out. So I'm going to go into plank, and I'm going to think that there's a block touching the abdomen, and there's a block touching the rib cage. I'm not going to hold this really long, but I'm going to let the chest relax down towards the hands, the fingers, and then I'm going to press back up. So I'm just going to do a couple more of these. So let the chest move down towards the hands, the fingers, and then press back up. So letting the chest move down. It's really the beginning of, having, again, more stability, but it'll help with pushing more, right? And then push straight up. So when you're pushing here, scapula is separated. Then just kind of move the weight around to adjust the hands, the wrists. Move it forward. Move it back. Move it forward if you can. Move it back in space. Take it back up into a down dog. Paddle the legs out. Right? Reach down through the heels. Right? And then I'm going to come forward onto my hands and my knees. So push-ups aren't like a prerequisite of handstands, but they do help. So if you can't do push-ups, what you can do is eccentric on the knees or on the toes. I think both are very good options if you don't have a lot of strength. If you're really lacking strength, you could do push-ups at the wall, but you'd have to do a high number of them. If you're really weak, it would just be 10. If you're stronger, it would be 20 to 30, something like that, right? So my hands are just underneath my shoulders. I'm just going to protract the shoulders. I'm not going to do a ton of push-ups. I'm just going to do 5, relatively slow. It's a good warm-up. It'll help get you stronger, and then it'll help you in pushing in straight arms. So bent arm strength is typically a little bit more difficult because it's coordinative, and it's also, you have to have the strength to hold other than just one angle, right? So I'm going to lift up into plank, and I'm going to come forward purposely with my shoulders, and then I'm going to slowly, slowly lower. Maybe I'm coming all the way to the floor and then coming to all fours. I'm going to press straight back up into plank. I'm going to hollow up the front of my body. I'm going to slowly lower, descending. I'm just hovering above the floor, and then up. I'm going to slowly lower. Glutes are engaged, abdomen's engaged. Right, just above the floor, up. And I'm going to do 2 more. So slowly, slowly, lower. Use your fingertips, push up. And then last time, lower, 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 hover. Be down, come to all fours, press straight up, and then come down. And then when you come down, just turn the hands out a little bit, and you're just going to do some wrist work. So the hands are turned out. I'm bringing my shoulders past the line of my wrist, because it's going to happen in handstands. So even if you're in the most aligned position, it can be a lot on the wrist for people. And that's partially why you want to do more and more planks and push-ups, in addition to practicing handstands. If you don't have that type of background, I think it really helps. So come back into the middle and turn the hands back towards the knees. And just move the weight around again through the circumference of the hands. So try to find corners that are tight, that are stiff. There's no real perfect number or how long you should do it. But if you don't have a lot of experience on your hands, I think it's important to do before you ever do a handstand. The more experience you get in handstanding, the less I think you need of this, unless you're doing, more complex variations of handstands. So I'm just doing one hand at a time. Not that you have to do it that way, but it just makes it a little you don't have a lot of awareness, it'll build more awareness where you actually need more work in the hands and the tissues. So just bring the backs of the hands to the floor, but think that you're holding on to something a little bit. And then if I'm going to turn my hands in, right? So I'm just changing angles to add just a different element into the wrist and into the shoulders. So then I'm going to come back, and you might need some blocks for this. I'm just going to have my hands beside me, and I'm going to lift my knees, and then I'm going to slowly lower, and then lifting, and then lowering, and lifting, just to help with your feet, also to help with your coordination. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with the knees. I'm going to take the arms forward if I need them for a counterbalance, just coming a little bit off the heels of the feet. Then I'm going to come up a little bit higher. Then I'm going to come up, just above the height of the knees. And then I'm going to bring myself back up and then lowering the heels. So I'm going to do some squats. Not that this is, I think if you're, using the yoga approach, you do like flow and then you handstand and then you flow. Gymnastics approach is that you're just doing sets and resting in between, which is a very good way. It's just people lose concentration in between sets, and then they don't take enough time, or they take too much time off. But I'm just going to do some strength work for your legs, which will help balance out the body. So you can take the arm forward if you need to. I'm going to sit down. Don't have to sit as low as I can, but I can sit into a squat. I'm going to come up, and then sitting down, and then up, and down. Let's say your heels come up. Okay. You could elevate the heels on something. It doesn't have to be this. I say it every class in this. The stronger your legs are, the stronger your upper body is, the easier it is to handstand. And it just, stronger you are, the more able you are. Strength, especially if you're a yoga practitioner, is highly, highly valuable. So supplement with strength, whatever it may be. There's many forms of strength training, but the stronger you get, like I said, you'll be much better in practice in anything that you do, and then you can come up. So it'll help in terms of kicking up, right? I'm going to do my first press exercise where it assimilates a handstand. So I'm going to do a kick up at some point, but this is the first kind of stage of it, and it's a good beginning stage, kind of like the plank, but it's a little bit more forward. So I'm purposely bringing my shoulders over my hands, and I'll hold it for X amount of time, probably about 30 seconds, I would say, which is a good start for someone. And it could be just 10 seconds for you. So if you're in the 10 second kind of frame, what you could do is 10 seconds on, rest for 30 seconds, go back to 10 seconds, and then repeat. And that could be like a practice for you. That could be like, you do 5 sets, something like that, right? So my hands are just alongside me. I'm sitting on my feet. So it's kind of like talking to press, like handstand, but we're not doing that. We're just going to lift up. So the idea is to get the hips forward, and this is what's going to help you in kicking up and eventually pressing up if that's something that you have an interest in. So I'm going to push through the hands. Just get the weight forward into the hands. Get the arms straight and spread the scapula out. And then you're going to push to the feet and bring the hips forward. So push through the hands, lift through the hips, and purposely bring the hips forward in space. So this is going to be, your hold. And for those of you that can't do handstands, this is your handstand, right? It's really the top of a pike push-up. So pike push-ups are something that you can eventually do, but this is a good starting point. So it's in some ways, so take 3 more breaths, moving the weight around just to adjust the hands, the wrist, and then I'm going to bring the knees down. So just take the arms overhead and elevate the shoulders up towards the ears, just like we did before. So you want to press like that. So if you were a person that was really having a hard time with that, practice more the elevation of the scapula. That'll help you. So come forward under the hands, lift the knees, and slowly, 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 slowly keep the shoulders forward and then lower all the way down. So I'm going to come up onto my elbows, just in a Sphinx position, just to help with my extension, which will help with my shoulders and my back. This is a great low back bend. When the hips stay down, it's much safer on the lower back. Like for cobras, an up dog, it's not taut where the legs are down. But when your legs are down, it's just really very good decompression of the lower back as you're extending. When your hips come off the floor and you come up into a higher back bend, that's where you can start to see possibly too much compression or folding, and it can be problematic for the back. So I really like this low position, but I'm going to come up higher for you so I can have the hands forward, and they could be more forward than the shoulders. I'm going to curl up into a higher position, but still my hips are down. So I'm extending my chest forward, I'm lifting myself up, I'm broadening my shoulders, and you could stay, right? I'm going to come down. I'm going to do this a couple times. So I'm going to come up. I'm trying to be a little bit more articulate in the thoracic spine. So I'm trying to lift through the thoracic. I'm going to come down. And then last time I'm going to curl, peeling myself up off the floor, and then coming up. Now, because my hands were more forward, if you do want more leverage into, say, the spine or just the position altogether, I could tuck my toes and to just move my hips forward towards my hands. So I think it's a little bit easier this way than having the hands underneath the shoulders and coming up, because it's kind of like could be too much pressure for you. You could get your feet closer together, and that'll help pull the hips down, right? So it's not excessive force into the lower back. So bring yourself forward, bring yourself down. Keep getting longer as you come down, and then I'm going to just push into the floor. Push, 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 push. Don't come up, but just push really hard, and then relax. And then get in a practice of pushing. Right? Push, push, even though you're not coming up. And then just come into Sphinx pose. So that exercise of just pushing is, I think, better for people psychologically, because sometimes when people push and they can't come up, it just embeds like, I can't do this. And the more you think you can't do something, obviously the more difficult it'll be. So I think you're going to gain, especially the pushing exercise that I just did, push for like 10 seconds. Just push, 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 push. It'll get easier and easier. And then as you get stronger, the hardest part in a push-up is just above the ground. It's the hardest part. So once you get off the ground in that way, getting to the elbows is easier, getting up higher is easier, getting all the way up is still difficult, right? But it's the easiest point, right? So if you want to push to all fours, you can. I'm going to be on the tops of my feet. I'm going to push through my hands. Just for those of you that have a little bit more strength, is just push where you're just above the ground, and then push up a little bit higher. So I'm lower than my elbows. Then push up all the way. Push the floor away from you really hard. Spread the shoulder blades apart. Not excessively, but if you notice that they can move a bit further apart, they were probably in, right? And then you can come down on the knees and just sit back on the feet. So I'm going to do a couple more. I'll do some squats in between, just again to get your legs a little bit stronger. And again, it'll help with the kick up, and then we'll go into our first kick up. So just to come up again, tuck the toes, lift the knees again, and then slowly lower, let them hover, and then bring them up. So it's really trying to keep the connection, and then up, lower, no crashing, and then up. Take the arms forward, bring yourself up, halfway. If you don't need the arms, you don't need to have them forward. It's just, again, a counterweight. Just going to do some twisted squats. So I'm turning my left knee in, I'm bringing it down, and I'm sitting back onto my heel. So if this is like, oh, no way, right? Come up. It's easier to do same side in some ways, just to come down and then up. Just a couple more. So come down, push through the feet, sit back on the heel if you can, back up, bring down, bring yourself down. Kind of see when you come up which leg you're using. Not that, either side is correct or incorrect, and then up. So I'm going to turn. So I'm turning, I'm twisting the knee, so rotating the thigh in, and then I'm sitting back on the foot if I can, coming up. So hovering, if you can't bring the knee down, I'm not even on the floor with my knee, so this is another way you could do it. And then up, 2 more, I'm gonna come down, relax the arms, press through the feet, bring yourself up, come down, and bringing yourself up to your back, into a standing position. So you can't kick up, it's okay. You could, what I did earlier in class was that press. That could be your practice. So just to refresh, if I was down on my knees and I was pushing through my hands and I was, push, that's the basic version, right? Really basic version. But if I could, I would push through the tops of my feet and come up and purposely bringing the weight forward. And honestly, that's in some ways it's more difficult than the actual handstand. Like it takes a lot of strength to do that, rather than once I get up into a handstand, there's ways I can rest in it. So if you have that ability, of course you can do that. Just because I think using a couple cameras, so just so people at Instagram could see it, I'm gonna kick up without the wall, but I would like you to use the wall if you've never kicked up to the wall, and just be playful but strong, right? And I'm gonna kick up maybe, 3-5 times, which would probably be like a minute. But so when I'm here and I'm pushing, I'm gonna round through the shoulders, right? And then as I'm down, I'm gonna take my leg up and bring it down, and then up, and then down, and up, and down. So you don't have to hold it, and that's, to hold like the L position that I just did is actually more difficult than holding the handstand. If you're learning to kick up, the faster you bring the bottom leg up, not that it has to be quick, but that back leg is holding you from getting into the straight line. So a lot of times people drag the foot back too long, and that's partially why they can't balance. They're just trying to hold the L too much, which is a perfectly good thing to hold. But once you get the legs up, it's actually easier. For those of you kicking up, it's okay if you whack the wall, right? Just be a little softer. It's getting the hips forward enough. And if you're falling out of it, you're probably kicking up too hard. Same thing, right? I'm going to do the left side. So I'm going to, again, just come up into an overhead position. Elevate the scapula. So really push. Like on the last one where I held it, I was pushing a little bit more. A bigger, I think that's a big reason why I can hold the handstands as I can, right? So just in these positions, try to get more of a hollowed position if you can, right? So push with the hands, elevate the scapula, I'm going to take my left leg up. I'm going to playfully lift my left leg up and down, swinging it up and bringing it down. So it's just a matter of finding a rhythm is big. It's a big part of it. Just come down onto your hands and your knees and just make your right hand into a fist and just pull back through the hand. So like I said, if you don't have a lot of experience on the hands, the wrist can hurt. I'd be lying if I didn't ever say I have hand pain or wrist pain. It's not that not that I hurt or that I've been injured from handstanding, but there's days that the wrist will hurt. But just get a big bag of rice. You know, there's tutorials on this. Dig your hands into rice or sand if you have access to sand or a beach, and 100 times, you know, that much. That's a very good way to build up the wrist again. So just come into all fours, come up into down dog, press back through the thighs, pull back, right? Slowly bring yourself forward, hollow yourself out. If you can, be on the tops of your feet, just to get some extra conditioning in. And then I'm going to slowly lower to the floor. So coming down, right? And then just come up onto the elbows. I'm just going to come up just to talk to you. Now you could extend, so you need more back extensions, you could extend, but I'm going to practice a handstand line, do a little bit of a hollow body, and those are great practices to include as well. And there's ways to, again, be a little bit more strategic outside of what I'm doing today. And if that's something that you're interested in, I could, write you out a plan. It's one of my services that I provide for people. So I'm going to extend my arms forward, overhead, and I'm just going to try to fill my lower back up. So notice when I don't do it, I kind of have this sway in my back, right? But when I do it, it should look like my lower back is a little bit not into a anatomical arc, right? So bring the head down, bring the ribs in, and bring the feet together. And hold strong. So get the ribs in. Doesn't look like much. It's really not a lot. But the better this is, the easier it is to hold a handstand. It's very simple. But it's an excellent exercise outside of, even if you didn't want to do a handstand, it's very good for your back. So bring your ribs in. And then you can just let that relax. So I'm going to do the extended version, and that's lifting the arms up. Now, if you don't have a lot of strength, what you could do is you could lift the arms up, a few seconds, bring them down. Bring them up again when you can, though, right? You keep working that. And the hands can be wider than the shoulders. So if you lack mobility in the shoulders, it's another way you could do it. I'm just going to keep my arms straight overhead as I'm in a handstand, right? So I'm going to keep my head down, squeeze my feet together, fill up my lower back, keep my ribs in, and then taking my arms up. So really lift through the arms. Not excessively, but consistently lift the arms away from the floor. Pull the ribs in. Make yourself nice and strong and small. And keeping it in. And then bringing the arms down. All right. I'm going to roll onto my back, and then I'm going to get into the hollowed position. So again, this could be what you do is you alternate these. You could rest in between if you needed it, 60 seconds, 2 minutes, something like that. So I'm going to take my legs over my hips. I'm going to come up with my head, my shoulders. And then this could be the boat, even though it's not hollowed, right? It's a good beginning. But you could bring the legs forward. You could take the arms overhead. And as you're in this, really work on filling your lower back into the floor. Because this is ultimately what you're doing in the straight line of the handstand. So take 5 deep breaths. And again, if you were kind of here, still good, right? Still helping getting you stronger. And then you can pull the knees back. I'm going to roll back onto my abdomen and do some cobra again before we do a second handstand. So have the hands underneath the shoulders or more forward than the shoulders. Come up into a low cobra. Really low. Keep the hips down. Stay up if you want. Bring yourself forward and down. Bring yourself up. Keep peeling up away from the hips. Bring yourself down. And then the last time, bring yourself up. So think I'm pulling your hips to the floor. Again, you want more leverage, bring your hips more forward towards your hands. But again, you want to keep your hips down, especially if you got stuff in your back. If you want to create more extension in the upper portion of the spine, it's really it's important to keep your hips on the mat. And bring yourself forward and down. Have the hands just underneath the shoulders. Broaden the back, tuck the toes, and lift straight up into plank. And spread out through the shoulders. Grip the floor. Use your fingertips, right? And come down with the knees. So I'm not going to do it, but when you're on your hands, be more deliberate, and you won't be able to hold it as long. Like if you push really, really hard in any variation of a handstand, you're not going to be able to hold it as long, but you're going to get more conditioned, which will in turn help support you. Because sometimes people get caught up in I got to hold plank for 2 minutes, but they're really not applying much strength at all. Not that it's a bad thing, but you push deliberately, it makes a huge difference. Like if you were falling, right? You have that intent through the hands, the fingers, and that can help support it. So be on the toes, sit back on the heels, take the arms overhead, try to get the shoulders up towards the ears, really lift. Just going to do a few of these, let it relax. Lift the shoulders up towards the ears, really lift up out of the scapula. Try to keep the rib cage in, just like when we were in the hollow body, the low boat. Let it relax. One more time, lift the arms, the shoulders towards the ears, and then you can let it relax. So what I'm going to do next is probably the most difficult way of doing it, and it's kind of saved it for last because I don't want to burn anybody out, but to get really stronger in the handstand, walking to the wall with your chest to the wall is probably the best way to get stronger. But again, push-ups are hard, and what I've done before is just hard, just not possible. You go back to that. And that's how I would write it out if I was writing it for you. It would be for you, and we'd be talking and stuff like that if we were working like that on that level. But when you walk in, right, maybe don't walk in as far as I do, and maybe only do one, right? But don't walk in so far, say it's really difficult to walk back, that you can't walk back out, because that's how you can get hurt. So you want to be able to walk, if this is new to you, just get familiar with it, walk back. Maybe it's not far at all, but it's a good beginning. And then you walk back a little bit more each time you do it, right? You don't have to walk all the way to the wall. If initially a good start is probably 2 to 3 hand lengths away from the wall. But try to stay hollowed, so and you'd have to do a lot of this to hurt your back. So it's not necessarily bad, but it's a good habit to have, right? So how you start out is you're starting out where your butt is to the wall, right? Use a yoga mat if you have a really slippery surface, right? I'm not going to move my yoga mat. I'm going to do it on the floor, but I'm going to walk back, and then I'm going to do it a couple times or a few times if I can, right, for you. But like I said, maybe it's only once. So when I come down with the hands, I'm going to really press to the hands, the shoulders, and you might have to, not have that you have to get you have to scream or yell or anything like that, but you really, maybe you have to raise your energy to do something like this. Like if you're in a gym, the guys are screaming and stuff like that, or they're playing loud music. You might have to do that initially to get yourself to go into this, right? But then over time, you don't, it could be you playing, classical music. Doesn't have to be, whatever, right? Press through the hands, round through the shoulders. I'm going to lift myself up. So to get back, this is really key, is that you're transferring the weight. If I was swinging from bars, right, brachiating, it doesn't take a lot of strength. It just takes momentum. So you shift the weight from one hand to the other, and that's how you can lift the hand off the floor. That's how you can walk on your hands. So you have to shift the hips side to side as you walk back, right? So press through the hands, round through the shoulders, lift whichever leg you want to lift up, and then you're up. Maybe this is the position, right? So I'm going to shift it to my right, to my left, to my right, to my left, and then I'm back, right? So just for a second, push, but then walk back out. And then come into a squat. That's one, but we'll do more. And when I do these, I don't really rest in between. I just do them. I'll do, 10, on a good day or more. But this really builds up a lot of strength in the hands and the arms. So like I said, if you're not going all the way back, go back enough, but then walk back out. And it'll get easier, it'll get better. It just, in something like this, with handstands, if you're just learning them, just do them like 2 or 3 times a week, tops. And then as you get more conditioned, you could certainly do them every day or multiple times a day. But, initially, don't do too much because you could obviously hurt yourself. I'm going to do a couple more, but like I said, don't do any more if you can't, right? So push to the hands, push to the shoulders, lift whichever leg is up, shift the weight around, walk back. And again, you don't have to be as close as I am. Ribs are in, shoulders are elevated, and then we'll walk back out. Right, come into a squat if you're done, right? Do some wrist work if you need it. I'm going to go back up one more time. So taking the foot up, walking back, and then keeping the ribs in. And I want my ribs to touch the wall, and then back out. And then back into a squat. So, like I said, when someone can't hold a handstand for like 10 seconds, sure, it's their alignment, but often it's just they're not strong enough, which is okay, right? It's just, if you want to learn it and be able to hold it for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, you can do that, even if you're not very strong or not very flexible. I really believe that you could build it up to that level. It's just, it shouldn't ruin your life in the process of doing it, and that's sometimes happens is people just do it excessively and then, they get hurt from it. So I'm going to come into a forward bend, and then when you come forward into a forward fold, is just take the right hand underneath the right foot, bring the toes up to the wrist, and I'm rotating the eye of my elbow forward, and I'm pulling back with my arm, so I'm in shoulder retraction. And I'm not pulling up really hard, to be honest, just a little bit of pressure. So I'm creating some separation between the bones. And then I'm going to, feel what it's like to push more with your foot, right? Because that can be really helpful. So you don't need that kind of pressure, don't do it. But I'm rotating the arm out. And then I'll take that hand out. I'm going to bring the left hand underneath, toes all the way up to the wrist if you can. And then when you get the weight forward, just with the weight forward and with the foot, I'm just rotating out and then pulling back. So what I said about a pull-up bar, you could do it like I'm doing, right? I'm down on one knee and I'm just pulling back up. I could have my knee in my hand as well, do the same thing. It doesn't have to be your foot. But, when I'm talking about hanging from a bar, you can adjust the wrist as well. You could grab a kettlebell or a dumbbell. It has the same thing, it has the same effect, but I wouldn't go too crazy with any of these things. Just do a little bit, do your routine, see what you need most, But like I said, unless I have an injury, then I would do it more, I'm just going to come into a forward fold where I'm not pulling so much with my foot, but think that you're bringing your legs to your upper body. As you bring your legs in more, this is how you'll fold forward better. It's not just hamstrings. It's just getting your legs closer to the upper body. Right? I'm going to come down into a squat. Push to the heels of the feet. It's okay to turn the feet out. Perfectly fine. Might actually be a better angle in terms of stretching, in terms of manipulating something. A lot of cueing in the last 10 or 20 years is really based on aesthetics. what looks better for a photo. So it's not necessarily that you have to do it that one way that's in a book or in an ad. It may be just that's what's popular or what one person said was correct, and then it was just regurgitated, over the years. But, feet forward has its benefits too. So it's not like you shouldn't do it that way. You could certainly round your back, but if you have a history of herniation, you'd want to extend the lower back where you're not dumping into the lower back, right? So I'm going to bring my hands back behind me. I'm going to sit down, and then as I sit down, I'm just going to do some stretching, just some general stretching. That, the good thing about yoga is you should feel amazing from it. And if you don't, there's ways that you could find better ways that you feel, that's why I've done yoga as long as I have. I feel so good from it. But I also do multiple forms of practice and training. It's not just that I don't just do yoga. It's probably been well over 10 years since I just did yoga. Like I do strength training, I do mobility work, I do other forms of motion and movements that keep my body, feeling very well. But if yoga is like your thing and you feel great from it, then of course, then you should only just do your yoga, right? But I'm going to take my foot up, and I'm trying to keep my leg up as best that I can into my upper body. So I'm using my hand, obviously, to keep it up, but I'm trying to bring it to my face as I'm doing this. Not with my arms, more with the strength of my hip. And then I'm going to bring it back where my knee and my armpit is together. This is, basic yoga. I think is really, useful. You bring the right leg down and then take the left leg back in space. So the armpit and the knee is inside of the armpit, and you're elevating the front of your body. Right? You're creating a diagonal stretch from right hip to left shoulder. You can expand in multiple directions. You could keep your leg like this. You could bring it forward. Pointing the foot is definitely less of it's still a stretch, but pulling the foot back is probably going to be a bigger stretch for you. But like I said, try to keep the leg up towards your upper body with not as much of your arms, right? So and that could be like 3 seconds on, 3 seconds off, something like that. If you held it for like a minute, 2 minutes, something like that, right? Then go back to getting the armpit and the knee together. Just pull the shoulder back in space, and then you can bring the left foot down. So I'm going to be in a tabletop position. So my hands are turned out, and I'm pushing through the hands, and I'm retracting the shoulders back. So getting the shoulders to move back, and then I'm going to lift the hips, but still keeping the shoulders pulled back, keeping the hips up, and I'm just going to move the weight around side to side, similar to what we did for your wrist, but just a different angle, right? And then just bring the hips down for a moment. Just let it relax, let the shoulders relax, and then pull the shoulders back. Like I said, if you don't have a lot of integration, it's good to come in and out of poses, which is not really typically what's taught. Not to say that classical yoga, like I love classical yoga where you're just holding poses long, right? That has its place. But if you don't have the mind-body connection, right, it's good to come out of poses. So I'm going to rock forward, and then I'm going to move back in space. All this time I'm trying to keep the hips up, not losing that. If I come too far forward, you'll definitely feel it in the elbows, like in a bad way. So don't come too far forward. Keep your hips up. Respect what your body can't do, and you can do many, 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 many things with it. But if you go beyond that, because some people sometimes they just are like, I'm just gonna do this, and then things could you could obviously hurt yourself. So I'm gonna stretch out the shoulders by coming forward, and this is what I'm talking about. So just bring the hips forward a little bit towards the feet, and you're like, oh yeah, this is a good stretch, right? This is good, and maybe that's all you need, right? It's pretty mild, right? But it's very good for the chest and the shoulders. But maybe it's too much, I bring the hips back. If it's not enough, I'm bringing my hips more forward towards my feet. And anytime I'm coming forward, this is just how I do it. You don't have to do it like me. As I'll wait a little bit, see what kind of pressure I need. And then maybe I'm bringing it forward more. And to really go further into progressing in terms of flexibility, it doesn't feel good initially. You know, it sucks. It's just, but it after a while it doesn't suck, and it feels great to do. But like I said, you want to bite off a little bit as opposed to, you know, biting off too much too soon. And then what you can do is just bend the knees, bring the hips back in space, and just go back where you're pressing the hands on the floor. I'm going to come up one more time. Maybe you can see a difference in how you come up. So lift the hips up, bring it forward. You know, it's much easier for me to come forward now. You know, really basic stuff, but very good to do. How I'm doing it today is, I think, better, you know, and then coming down. Because if you do too much warm-up and too much, like, you know, mobility, whatever, before you get into your handstands, you kind of lose your momentum. I know that for me, I try to keep it shorter. I still do it, right? But I don't want it to take away from the actual practice. And then some people just get into like broomstick and all that business, which has its place, but I think it's good to do after as well. Obviously a little bit before. So I'm just going to move to the left side, stretching out the right. I'm going to move forward in space. Just some basic stretching for you. I'm going to come down on the elbow, and then I'm going to come up. So I'm coming down. Now I'm coming down so that you get more space on your right side. If it feels like it's compromising the left, not that you shouldn't come down, but I'd probably stay up, right? You can bring yourself up and then slide out to the right side. As you go to the right, you can lean forward in space. You can lean back, you know, finding the right angle. Again, I could get lower with my elbow. And you know, really depends on the side where you need to leverage it. You know, I'm very aware of how I should approach the poses depending on the side. And that might take you some time to, you know, to understand that. So you can bring yourself up. So I'm going to take the legs out in a wide position, and with my legs out wide, same kind of stretching, just different variations, but I'm lifting my legs, trying to lift my legs up off the floor, not off the floor literally, but lifting them up. That changes the exposure. And, you know, maybe you really do need to get lower in some way. There's a couple ways you could do it. You could take your hand behind your head. That gets me lower. Taking, you know, what's getting more popular is, you know, this type of position. That'll add more weight. That'll get you down. And then you can come up. And then you can bring yourself, you know, martial arts and dance, right? They're using more motion, which can be used. You know, it's really frowned upon in the yoga world. But you could certainly use that, you know, if I had a conversation with you and you were just like, I've been trying to get down for years, I would definitely use motion, or I'd use some external weights to get you lower. The more flexible you are, the less weight you need. So if you're pretty flexible, you don't necessarily need to use like a big weight plate to get you down or anything like that into any of these positions. So bring yourself up. You don't have to come forward, but if you'd like to, you can bring yourself forward. Think of what's coming forward as your navel. Think of what's coming forward as your sternum. And it's going to be really hard on the legs. So you can always bend the knees. Take a break when you need it. Bring them back straight. You know, come forward. But this is where you'll probably need some extra weight, I know, for myself. So what I do is I take my hands behind my head, and that brings me forward. I'm not so concerned with getting my elbows down, right? I want to get more of my belly down and my sternum down. So more of the lower half of my torso, I want to get forward and down. Because anybody can get their arms down or their face down. But can you get your abdomen down? Again, you know, when I come up, take the arms out to the side. And I'm going to come forward one more time, but I'm going to bring the arms overhead. So I'm bringing it forward. Again, if I had back pain, I would not be doing this. So bring yourself forward. Try to lift the thighs up and out. You can make your hands in a fist. And I'm purposely trying to come away from the floor because the moment I get down with my body, your body relaxes, right? So you're obviously adjusting your body, but you're really training your nervous system, being in positions. So the more when I come down is when I get the most leverage, right? And then you can bring yourself up and you can sit in any comfortable position. So I hope this class helped you. I had a great time today. Leave me some comments if you have any comments, or if you have friends that would be interested in my services, please share. All these classes, I'm trying to upload them onto my YouTube channel, so you could subscribe. You could like it there. It helps me in getting more visibility and helping more people. All my classes are donation-based, so if you could donate, fantastic. If you can, you could help me in sharing my work. It helps me, again, working with more and more people is why I ever started teaching yoga. I felt so incredibly indebted to the practice that I really wanted to share it with everyone, and I'm so glad that I have, and I've been doing it for so long. So if you could do that, fantastic. I have a class tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern, and it's a Hatha class. It's a good fundamental class. I have a class Sundays, and that's on my Zoom platform, and you register for that class on my website, so you can find all my information at jonwittyoga.com. I have a training coming up, and that's in February. It's for therapeutic yoga. So if you're a therapist in any format, you want to teach people or heal people, it's a great training. It's a 100-hour training online with my friend Dana Slamp, who is the founder of Prima Yoga Institute. All right. Take care, be well, stay safe, and keep handstanding. All right.